We didn't know what we were doing. We just wanted a chance to explore and experiment and try to find some great people to do it with, and build a brand that we could be proud of.
Welcome to Quality Matters, where we speak with experts across industries to see how their perspectives can inform our pursuit of high quality education for all students. I'm Shaka, and this is Caitlin, and we're happy to be your guides for this limited series.
Like you, Shaka and I are passionate about all students having access to a great education, and quality is a driving force behind our work. But what does quality really mean? In an era where parents can customize their child's education, this question is more important than ever.
During each session, we'll hear from leaders in education, technology, business, sports, and the arts. We hope to apply their insights to our pursuit of a great education in the K-12 space.
Join us on this journey to secure a great education for all children. This is Quality Matters.
Well, today's guest is Clint Smith, and Clint is the co-founder of Emma, which is a pioneering email marketing platform. It really helped redefine how organizations connect with their audiences. Clint is based in Nashville, where he has served with some nonprofits, where he's been a mentor to other entrepreneurs and business leaders. He's also a husband and father. Really glad that Clint is with us today. I also saw, Clint, that you are not a tremendous fan of the gin blossoms, and for that, you've moved up even higher in our esteem. So thanks so much for being with us this morning.
I just think it's an important biographical detail to share.
It certainly is. Certainly is. We take music very seriously. So,
and of course, now that my friends know that I hate gin blossoms, I hear gin blossom songs all the time.
That's right. That's right. Well, I feel that for you. I apologize.
A minute and a half of revenge at a time. Yeah.
Well, Clint, let's jump into this episode of Quality Matters, and but we want to start and just get to know you a little bit more and share some of your story with our audience, and would love to know sort of what inspired you to build Emma at the beginning. This was a space that, depend upon maybe how you judge it, there were already some tools in the space, but it wasn't a really robust sector. What kind of led to the creation of that company?
A couple of things. One was potential unemployment, which is always a motivating factor. Will and I had been part of another really special startup called smallbusiness.com that had launched in the late 90s and had a real chance to do something special that was going to be the ultimate online community for small business owners scattered around the country and the world, well before there was LinkedIn, well before there was really anything of its kind. And in spite of a great team and a great idea and a really good URL, didn't quite have the chance to get out of the gates before the dot-com crash hit and pulled the rug out from under a lot of companies. So it was sort of the combination of there not being in 2001, right, early 2000s, a whole lot of interesting technology companies here in Nashville in particular, and the idea that we just saw something really, really special that we believed in, and we wanted to keep that going. We wanted to continue that startup experience that we've been a part of, and maybe have a chance to build some product and an interesting team of great people. And so it was trying to sort of mirror that experience we just had at a time where we didn't see that in a bunch of other companies around us, right? And so that was really it. And we didn't know exactly what we were going to set out to build. We just thought we would start offering some services to companies around town. And eventually we struck on the idea of email, because the tools we had used, to your point, there were some out there for sure, but none of them felt great. They were fairly complex or clunky. The experience, so I think I froze over a second. The experience was not very good. It was early enough in the days of software and email in particular, where when we wanted to send out a newsletter at the previous startup, we had to call the company and say, hey, we'd like to push a newsletter out tomorrow. Can you guys help? That was how early the technology was, and to some extent how inefficient. So we looked around at that landscape, said, hey, we think we can do something better. We'd really like to provide small businesses with the tools to make their work a little bit better, make their work experience a little bit better. And And so that's kind of what we set out to do with them.
Yeah, and it really grew really quickly, and so we want to hear more about that. Caitlin, you want to jump in?
Yeah, sorry. I love hearing about when people start something new, like when they build something and, they're sort of building the ship or building the plane while they're flying it. When you start something new and when you're building something from scratch, you're sort of uniquely positioned because in some ways you get to define what success is going to look like and what sort of the metrics are going to be that you use to gauge whether or not you're doing what you want to be doing what you need to be doing. So I'm curious, sort of from your experience, I guess, in 2 startups, but I know there have since been many more. What are some of the metrics or some of the indicators that you use to gauge what success is looking like in those early days, but also as you continue moving on?
Yeah, well, in the very beginning, right, it was all about bringing more customers on. And so every month we wanted to make sure that we were signing new people up once we were, out in the market with the product. So that was a huge metric, right? Our people, we think we've got a product that brings value. Are the right kind of customers agreeing with us with their wallets, right? And in terms of signing up and joining us. And then are we retaining customers? Are the ones that we signed up last month or a few months ago continuing to use and find value in the product and renewing essentially with us every month or later, when we got a little bit more sophisticated every year or two when their contracts expired. So the customer adoption and usage and retention metrics were really everything, because that was the ultimate validation. Before we started to market broadly, we went to a handful of groups that we thought were representative customers, right? People out there who should find value in what we were building. And the Belcourt Theater was sort of customer one. And we said, well, gosh, they've got a great audience. They've got great content. They have a reason to email people every week with the update of the movie listings and that sort of thing. And so we spent a lot of time literally sitting in the room with them saying, hey, help us. This is sort of the concept. We're going to show you how it's going to work. Help us make it better. And if you think it's better, then hopefully movie theaters everywhere will feel like it's better. And if we could find a few other customers, representing different industries, felt the same way, then we felt like we had something. So at the very beginning, it was really just feedback, right? Are they liking what they're saying? Are they telling us positive things? Are they giving some good feedback to make it better? And then later that turned into the hard metrics of our customers signing up and our customers using it, and then our customers sticking around ultimately.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does make a lot of sense. And it's so easy to draw sort of that natural comparison to education from what you were just describing. Like so many of these new emerging school models are gauging and, sort of decide whether or not their model is successful based off of whether or not they have parents signing their kids up continuously to engage in those new school platforms. And so I hear exactly what you're saying by, are you getting feedback? Are you getting engagement? Are people interested in what it is you're building, and sort of that being those initial metrics for
right.
whether or not
it's the same. Our customers in that case, parents and their students signing up and joining us, and when school year ends and it's time to make a decision about next year, are they renewing? Are they planning to come back? I think you're right. It's very, very similar.
Yeah. Well, and especially in the case of education, but this would have been, I think, pretty similar to Emma in the early years. Most of your customers or even potential customers had other lower cost options, right? You were sort of trying to get them, I have to imagine, to pay for something. And I bet many of them said, yeah, but can't we do the same sort of thing for free? And you're trying to say, yeah, but you're not really doing the same thing. You're certainly not doing it as well. Yes, you can just send emails out, or, Caitlin's probably not old enough for this, but I'm old enough to remember when we used to get these just faxes would sometimes come into our office, and it was just like a fax solicitation to sign up for some vacation thing. I don't know if anybody ever responded to those, right? But I bet there were some lower cost options. And so you're trying to get people to pay for something that is like really new. And so you've got to be responsive to that feedback and show value.
I think that's exactly it. And you're right. The F word that none of our kids understand. Papers coming out of machines that, right. That we're supposed to read. But no, I think that's exactly it. We spent some time at the very beginning saying, okay, well, who else is out there in terms of other sort of similar products? What are they offering? Some of them had been around for a number of years and had a very rich feature set and, charged appropriately for it. And I said, well, we can't be that. And there's some cheaper tools, including your Outlook or doing it completely on your own. And we're going to be hopefully more valuable than that. And so where do we fit so that our pricing is representative of where we feel like we are on the value sort of grid. And then, of course, as we grew and were able to invest more in the product and add more features and hopefully more value, we were able to also charge a little bit more for it. But you're right, we were definitely, even in the beginning when there wasn't a large competitive set, having to convince people in some cases to move away from another product or to pick up a more sophisticated product from what they were currently using if they were doing it, sort of on their own or DIY. And make that case, right? And then prove it, day in and day out with the product itself, the feature set.
Well, one of the things that this makes me think of, and I'm going to, I know we sort of sent out some questions ahead of time, and I'm going to skip one because I think that this next one is pretty relevant. As you were sort of explaining the value to customers, especially in those early days, because I have to think you were both educating your customers and providing a service, right? And so kind of these dual things. What we now know is that there is just what seems like an ever increasing data set when it comes to this email marketing space. And now, the sort of social media, are we looking at impressions or click-through rates, or, there's call to actions, there's all this stuff that you can measure, right? Yeah. It also means that there's a lot of noise. And for our audience who thinks a lot about education, this probably sounds a lot like the education space. There's a lot of data, sure, which can mean there's a lot of noise. How did you think about identifying kind of like the right metrics? Did it vary by customer, by client, or, how did you think about not just throwing everything out there and saying, here's 35 different things that you can look at? Because that would feel pretty overwhelming, I think.
Yeah, you're right. And even, in the beginning, there was a fair amount of data to share to that point, and you had data for each particular campaign you sent. Even within a campaign, you had opens and clicks and multiple layers of detail. You could go as deep as you wanted to. And I think we realized at some point, kind of what you're alluding to, is that the more important thing was to add it all up into metrics that were bigger and more ultimately goal oriented. And we tried to think of that in a couple of ways. One was we actually created a proprietary metric that sort of captured all of a campaign's key metrics and rolled it up into a single number, kind of like a campaign score, right? So you could at a glance not just say, okay, this campaign did well, and I can look at a single all-encompassing number, a grade essentially, an A, B, or C kind of number, and then how can I look at that trend over time? Am I doing better with campaigns than I did 6 months ago, or certain campaigns performing better than others, and I can learn from that? So part of it was to add it all up and to simplify it, and then you could certainly dig into the layers below it if you needed to, and then how can we get closer and closer to the most meaningful metrics? Meaning, what is that customer's goal? If it's the bulk or theater, they want people to come and watch movies. If it's a lot of for-profit businesses, well, then they're trying to, again, attract new customers or get existing customers to use and spend more with them. And so how can we get closer to their ultimate goal, which is generally going to have some component of revenue attached to it, right? So that was sort of the quest, right, that was never ending, is how can we be as close to those central goals for a customer as possible, even though there are going to be other tools supporting some of those same goals and metrics as well.
So I'm curious, so many of the things you're talking about, I can just imagine what it looks like, sort of like inside the factory of, you're producing this great product, you're trying to engage with your customers and your clients. So I want to switch gears, from the internal workings of your company. How did you create an environment, or what were some of the key factors that you maximized on your team so that you could evolve your concept and evolve your product and take new ideas and implement them to continue the success of growing all of these things? And I guess at Emma, but I'm also curious in some of your other experiences, basically, what does it look like to be a leader in this type of environment?
Well, it's, I saw this for the first time really at a company called City Search, if you even remember what that was, but an early internet set of online city guides, right? And I spent 4-ish years as my first taste of kind of startup life, and they were California based, like many of them in the early days, and that was my first sort of view into a company that was really flat hierarchically, really open and collaborative, fast moving, and with people who pretty much across the board were really interesting, smart people who were curious about work and about life, and embrace this idea of being part of a team working towards something bigger. So I'd seen a couple of examples of that when we started Emma, and had some things to sort of borrow from in creating our culture. And I think, and then some of that, of course, is just, I think, how you're wired as a founder, just as a human being. And so a lot of times I think some of the core elements of an environment or a culture or a brand are reflective of your own sort of just, innate sort of nature, as with most founders. And so what we wanted to do, and what I wanted to do personally, was create a similar sort of vibrant culture where we wanted to be really clear on goals. We wanted to be really transparent with everybody in terms of why those goals mattered, and in terms of how the work we were all doing contributed to those goals. I think transparency is huge, because people want to feel like they're in on the thing. They feel like they're part of something, not just a cog in the system. And so from the very beginning, we sort of, because we knew we needed to have a very collaborative, innovative place in support of our customers, wanted the space inside the building to feel the same way. And that just meant a lot of open communication, a lot of sharing, good, bad, and otherwise, in terms of what we were hearing from the market and from our customers, and just trying to do the best we could to support that team, understanding that from the very beginning, if we were going to have success, that everybody that we hired and brought onto it was going to have to feel really invested in it themselves. And how could we make sure that they had what they needed to feel good about what they were doing, week in and week out, that they understood the importance of the work, and at some level they were able to share in, some of the rewards if we did that work well. We some tangible things. One of the things we did was we had weekly, team huddles, roundups, right? That we really never stopped having, even when we were, 150 employees plus, because we felt like it was really important for us to get in the room together, to hear the open updates about how things were going, and just to have that time together to look around the room and hear what people are up to, and be able to sort of cross-pollinate a little bit across departments, people who might not see each other, day in and day out normally. And then we tried to do some things to reinforce it. One was we tried to, when we hit about 20 employees, we needed to capture the culture a little bit and what we were trying to accomplish. And I wrote our first Emma style guide that was sort of not meant to be an employee handbook at all. It was meant to be more of just, hey, here's why we're here, and what we're all about, and what we're trying to accomplish, and why. And why you will see things around the office, or experience things around the office, and how they all connect, just to put it into words on paper, so that there could become this sort of shared sensibility, and it wasn't just kind of through osmosis and shared more casually. So that was something we did, and then we tried to build in some other fun support things. We had a thing called kick-ass cards, where any employee could go grab a card and a gift card, a $50 gift card, and give it to somebody else who they thought really went above and beyond that week or that month or with that project, as a way to just let them thank each other, and give them a little bit of a pat on the back, in addition to whatever we might be able to do over time as a company more broadly. So just some building in some structural elements to reinforce the idea of the culture that we were trying to foster.
Yeah, I can just imagine how much the investment that the employees and the people, working behind the scenes had in the actual product that they were creating. There's a lot of pride, I'm imagining, that fostered in their work output, and sort of that camaraderie and that togetherness, goal-oriented transparency in what it is everybody's trying to achieve. I can really understand why that created the success that it did.
Well, we realized pretty early on that in an effort to create a strong brand experience outside of the house, because we were in houses for the first number of years, right? As our office space, that it was really critical that we create that same sort of internal brand or culture with the group that would reflect through, right? Both in our the stuff, that the materials we put in front of customers or potential customers, in terms of the sales experience we offered, in terms of the customer experience once they were with us, all of that. And I think the best compliment we got, we didn't get it all the time, right? We were always striving to be better and more and closer to our own ideal. But I always felt like the best compliment we got was from somebody who said, you know what, when I first ran into you or some of your folks at a marketing conference, they were amazing. And then when I called in and spoke to someone on the sales team, and then when I signed up and had somebody onboard me, and then when I talked to customer service people later, and maybe I came into the office if we were in Nashville or visiting, that experience felt the same all the way through. That everybody was friendly, everybody was knowledgeable, everybody made me feel warm and welcome. That was ultimately what we were aspiring to. And to pull that off at any level, the folks inside the room have to feel it very genuinely, that they are really invested in what they're doing, they're having a good time, and they genuinely want to share that with customers and the like.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about just your ethos, and even your tone is really different, I think, from what one often thinks of as coming out of sort of Silicon Valley, being in the tech space. And I mean that as a tremendous compliment. It's really, there has become more of a stereotypical, tech founder or tech co-founder sort of archetype, right? That, you're wearing plaid. That's like unheard of. You should have
plaid
on,
with a shirt very similar to this too.
Yeah.
The plaid theme runs deep.
Right. Well, and and that's not Silicon Valley per se, right? The archetype of this sort of like black shirt wearing, uses the word disrupt every other word. And listen, some tremendous things have come out of that movement and those founders. But I don't hear you sort of saying like, yeah, we were just our goal was to both move fast, break things, burn people out, and innovate and disrupt the whole space. It sounds like you were doing something very different, but I'm wondering, was there anything, whether at Emma or in any of the other companies that you've been associated with, and you don't have to name them, but was there anything where you said, hey, you know what, this is just not working, actually? Maybe we went too far, too far in one direction, or, and we need to kind of euphemistically pivot. Was there any lessons like that where you said, yeah, we tried this and it was just not a good fit for what we were trying to do?
I like the question. I mean, and to be clear, like, so much of a company, particularly startups, are a reflection of their founders. And Will and I just weren't wired that way to be really hard driving, sort of take no prisoners type, founders and leaders. And I'll be honest, like, we probably could have been a little bit more aggressive and built a bigger company and done some things that had we had a little bit more of that in us. But I was frankly more interested in treating Emma as a bit of a laboratory. This was business school without going to business school. We didn't know what we were doing, at that point in life and career. And we just wanted a chance to explore and experiment and try to find some great people to do it with, and build a brand that we could be proud of, right? And that was sort of our North Star, more so than trying to build the absolute biggest company we possibly could, but a company that felt great and was doing good things, and that people saw and appreciated. I had seen, like I said, a couple of really good examples of some of that. And I definitely saw in my first job out of college, we won't name names, a different sort of company where I ultimately walked out and said, those were a lot of lessons of how not to do things. And one of them was, and it was, again, there were some challenges, I think, ultimately with how those leaders and that leadership team treated the company and treated the employees. And I think some of the quote unquote values felt a little bit superficial and not genuine, sort of to the core. And part of how that showed up was when they decided ultimately to put some values on paper and on T-shirts, which we all got. That's when you should start shaking your head when they hand you a T-shirt with values on. They hired an outside consulting firm to come up with them for them. And essentially outsource the work in collaboration with some of the inside team. And it felt, and as a bit of a writer and a grammarian, it kills me to this day that they had a list of like 10 words, and it would be like adjective, 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 noun, adjective, adjective, noun, verb. You're like, can we at least agree on a part of speech, right? If we're going to put a list of things together. And sure enough, a few years later, the company had started to sort of split apart and splinter, and ultimately did not succeed. So it was sort of the lesson for me that stuff is real, and it has real consequences, right, in terms of how successful a company can be over the long haul. So I had definitely seen a mix of things that I set out, we will definitely do that again, if we have the chance, and things that I'm like, I will never do that the same way, if possible. So
you kind of just segued into exactly what I was going to ask. We'll definitely do that again. On that train of thought, with what you definitely would want to do again, is there anything, or can you name one of the lessons you've learned in sort of all of your experiences that you think would help the education sector? As we've sort of discussed on the podcast, there's a lot of similarities between the work that you're doing and the way you're doing it and how schools operate and how schools function. So from your perspective, what's the one thing that you've seen that you would do again that you think might be able to inform positively education at this juncture?
Yeah, it's a big question, right? I think there are a couple things. I do think if you're a school, having a really clear sense of the ultimate goal, that isn't going to change so much, month to month. Maybe it changes a little bit year to year, but you've got a really clear sense of where you're headed. We were never clearer on our purpose, and we were honestly never as successful as pushing toward a goal when it was the big thing painted on the wall, essentially. When we first started Emma, our big goal, because we had seen what can happen if you're not careful and you don't get to profitability, and you aren't able to sort of control your own destiny, right, as an independent company. And so getting to profitability was the singular goal. And of course, that pulls a lot of other things with it, right? You've got to spend efficiently. You've got to hire in a really smart way. You've got to find customers. You've got to keep customers, all the things, right? So there are lots of supporting goals. But that was the thing. That was the absolute North Star. And we got there. And we got there on time and remained a profitable company, from that point forward. And similarly, in the later stages of Emma, when we decided, hey, for a variety of reasons, we think now is the time to build toward an exit over the next couple of years. We were also never as successful as getting there because we declared the goal, we framed it up, we understood what we would need to do to support it, and ultimately got there. So I think having that really clear North Star of what's most important and a sense of how you get there is important. And then, of course, making sure that that's shared, both in terms of understanding what the goal is and that everyone knows sort of their part in helping to make it happen. And then I think that's sort of the big stuff. And then I think the other end is sort of underneath that, really continuing to personalize how you get there with students and with parents and with families. I always thought it'd be one of the most powerful things. And we did this with our one of our kids, a little bit later, in the middle of college, but we paired him up with a consultant who works with kids to figure out what their innate strengths are, their abilities, things they might be really inclined to do well because they're interested and they've got some aptitude for it, whether it's a career path or a field of study, what have you. And it's eye-opening, right? When you go through a little bit of that process and see, wow, this is quantifying, for him in that case, and really for us, because like I'd like to do that for myself at this point in life, to really understand some things that I could really be capable of doing, based on a lot of factors. And the more you could sort of push that down into earlier school life and start to understand where a child's inclinations might be, and then expose them to those things, whether it's types of music or art or math or science or what have you, to just sort of start thinking in that goal-oriented way, maybe a little bit earlier, and make that sort of whole process for a student and his or her family feel really purpose-driven, right? To get you closer to what you ultimately would do. And obviously, if you're a college preparatory school, that is the ultimate North Star, right? Is getting a student ready for college and ultimately accepted into a college that feels really right and really great. And we've had great experiences with some of the college career counseling that we've done at certain schools, and less than great versions of that at other schools. And I keep thinking, gosh, how is there anything more important to that in terms of what you focus on and what you invest in and the kind of experience that you want to deliver for those customers, right? Who are paying you if you're a private school, or paying you in a different way, investing in you in different ways, if not, to ultimately get your child where they want to be. And so that may not be the succinct sort of silver bullet answer, but that's the best I got.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Thank you so much, Clint. I mean, I think on that, in the note of personalization, you talk about personalization and the college counseling, college and career counseling, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think regardless of system, public charter, private, homeschool, whatever, that experience would be valuable for any young adult, right? Because, if frankly you're only getting the input from your parents, well, that's limited, and we know that they love you, whatever. But how
we might
great
forget
it is
great
to have
periods
access.
during middle school, high school, that's the case. Yes, that our parents love us.
That's right.
That might, we're not their customer in the same
We
way.
test the bounds.
That's
Right.
That's right. Exactly.
That's right.
But you're right. I mean, I think that's right. And then suddenly, like if schools do a better and better job using some modern technology, using a lot of tools at their disposal to connect kids with things that they're interested in, right? And things that they, by exploring, could send them on an interesting path, career-wise, college-wise, or both. Then school becomes a place that I'm excited to be a part of, right? I know that this is now not a place now that's making me study things I hate and maybe do homework, even though there's still maybe some of that I have to do. But in the mix of all the things, like there is stuff that I genuinely like to do, and I'm excited to get up and get on the bus, right, and go do it. And it's also why the challenge, for kids who are wired for music and the arts, you hate to see school programs like that getting cut or eliminated, because it's such a huge part of what so many kids just gravitate toward, right? It's an enjoyable thing if you're at all inclined toward the arts, and to be blocked from that experience early in life, right? Could block you, could not sort of make it clear that could be either a path for life or just a path for hobby. For the rest of your life, something that you really enjoy. So I always hate it. I know we all do when we see stuff like that. And similarly, like it's great walking through schools, particularly like magnet schools, where you see the little college pennants, banners kind of taped on the wall, right, of either where students have gone in past years, or where current kids are planning to go. And again, college isn't the end all be all for everyone, but again, it's the equivalent of painting that goal on the wall. This is what we're here for, right? And so all the little things, every day and every week and every semester are meant to build toward something really, really incredible potentially.
Yeah. Well, what it makes me think of, and we'll have to close here. We're at time, but like you said, it's sort of putting something tangible on the wall, right? And saying not just a college, but a specific pennant, a specific school, maybe even one that you could go visit, maybe one where you could hear from a former student or something. For a lot of students, first generation college goers, this might be the first time that they've been able to picture themselves in that role. Now, the flip side of it is you don't want to be like the Belushi sweatshirt that just says college, right? which I would say it is a little bit like the t-shirts at maybe that place that you work.
That's
where
right.
It goes, no, it's got to have more meaning than that.
A little bit more meaning than that. Although I was hoping that we would end with some sort of Animal House reference. And
there it is.
I'm really glad that it was Belushi specifically that came up. But I couldn't agree more. One of the most powerful things we ever did at Emma, this was much later in the game when we were, 10 plus years in, we had our leadership team do a future present tense sort of visioning exercise where everybody said, imagine life. We had done it once before with an outside group up in Michigan that had us go through it more personally as leaders and to picture sort of 5-10 years out, right? But we just said, like, look, let's look a year out and write a paragraph or two or whatever you feel like, imagining us in that place. And what are you most proud of us having done as a team and as a company, as a brand? And we all got together, did an offsite in New York, and everybody went around the table and read theirs. And it was so powerful to hear what people valued, right? And some of them talked more about culture than anything else. Some of them talked about product and taking that much further. Some of them talked about impact in the market. Some of them talked about our support of causes and charities. And it was incredible. And we could put all that together and say, then this becomes part of that North Star for us over the next year of what we ultimately want to accomplish. And we know we can all look at each other and say, well, if we get there, then we know we'll all be really thrilled with that outcome. And I think you're right, helping students and families paint that picture for themselves, even if the picture changes a little bit, right? You lock in with one idea, and then a couple of years later, new opportunities emerge and new thinking, and right, it's okay. You can always go back and update the goal, but to have a picture in your mind of what this is all for, right, and what it could ultimately lead to for a family, right, is enormous, I think.
I agree. I love that focus on forward and just the imaginative component of what people can conjure up when they are given the freedom to imagine what their future might look like, and they have control over deciding that. And I think that's really powerful. It clearly was effective when you guys used it, and who knows how effective it could be when kids all over the country start engaging in those types of activities and are given the encouragement. And again, the word freedom keeps coming back to imagine and to be really intentional about what that looks like.
And to remind you that the work of school is for you ultimately as a student, right? It's not you doing work for the school or for the teacher. It's you working for yourself. And what could that lead to? Let's start to draw it up, picture it, and work our way toward it together.
That's fun. Yeah, I love that mindset shift. Well, Clint, we've really enjoyed this conversation, and thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Quality Matters. You've given us a lot of food for thought, and Caitlin and I are going to have a breakdown. We're going to talk about this, so I hope our audience will tune into that. Definitely, if you like this episode, we would love for folks to like it and subscribe, share it with a friend. But Clint Smith, we are so grateful to have you on today. Thanks so much.
My honor and pleasure. Thank you guys so much, Shaka and Caitlin. Good luck with everything.
Thank you.
All right, Shaka, what a great conversation with Clint Smith. Just another example of how much we can learn and how much education can be positively influenced by learning more about other industries and learning more about how other people have had success in their industries. I'm curious and excited to hear sort of what parts of the conversation you found to be so enlightening. I know for me, it was a lot of his conversation about the power of being goal-oriented and the power of having camaraderie and mission alignment in the house or, in the office, and what can be accomplished when you have those things and there's transparent communication on what they are. I felt throughout the conversation myself getting jazzed and excited about imagining, different working environments in my own world, with those things being sort of the drivers.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the things that stands out to me, and we've seen this with several of our other guests on Quality Matters, is how the organization takes cues and really takes direction. This shouldn't be a surprise, but takes direction from leadership. And you get this sense from Clint that he and his co-founders um, had a set of values that just permeated the culture
For sure.
in a way that was meaningful. And so I love the example that Clint gave around the company that he worked for once it basically didn't have a coherent set of values and then just threw something on a t-shirt. And they were like, here's what we believe in. And I think probably many of us have been at organizations or part of groups or something where you kind of get the t-shirt only and you're like, well, I don't know if this doesn't really feel that meaningful. It's just it's the stuff you put in a brochure, but then when you're on site you go, yeah, it doesn't really match, right?
Yeah, that
And
inauthenticity.
yeah. And so having a culture, well, every organization has a culture. So let's just say that. I believe that every organization has a culture. Whether or not it is a healthy culture is another question. And so making sure that those values just kind of permeate, I think is super important and really relevant for schools. So do you say, does a principal at a school, for instance, say, okay, here's what we're about this year? Well, if you change those things mid-year, that's going to be really confusing to faculty, to families, to students,
Totally.
etc. And frankly, even if you change too much from year to year, that's disruptive in an unhealthy way. So having some
Yep.
consistency there, I think, is really important.
Totally agree. That consistency is crucial. My brain went from consistency, so returning year to year. And
Yeah.
it reminded me of when he talked about, initially at Emma, one of the metrics they used to understand their success or gauge their success was, are their customers returning?
Yep.
And we made the connection, in the same way, a lot of these new school models are gauging their success by whether or not the parents are returning or the kids are returning. You're going to return to something that's important to you, that's helpful to you,
Yeah.
unless you have to return because you don't have the option for anything else. And of course, my brain then went to, you have lots of kids returning to failing schools, not because
Yeah.
they want to, but because they have to, because that is their zip code. It doesn't work for them. They have no
Yep.
other choice. And they just return back to those same schools. So one of the huge metrics for success, or one of the huge metrics that people are using to quantify their success, is whether or not people return, customers return. And some schools are missing out on that gauge because they're mandating that students return. And so they're taking away that decision and that autonomy that those parents and children should be having, but don't. And I think it's muddying the waters, because people are, you hear the argument all the time. Probably you're more well versed than I am. Well, why, if this school had more money, then it would have, they'd have better outcomes. The kids would be better. When the kids don't come, people still expect more money to go to those schools. Like, it
Right.
just really, it muddies the water. And as far as what success looks like, and that's no longer a metric for all schools.
Yeah. I also heard Clint say that the feedback loop, let's remember that it's a feedback loop, meaning you ask some questions and give that customer the opportunity to say what they really think, what they really appreciate, what they really value, and then you take that information in and you let it perhaps alter your behavior and improve your product, right? So he said early on, their company, when he was at Emma, they said to their first client, is this working for you? If not, help us make it better.
Right.
Right. And that to me is the loop. And I think a lot of the conventional public school system, unfortunately, is they don't even ask the question.
Totally.
Because they don't have to. Clint had to, because if that first client didn't appreciate the product, didn't find value in it, they would say, hey, we're out. We're not going to do this anymore. You know? And so I think that's a little bit of what you're talking about is you don't get a completed feedback loop when people are forced to attend, because you're not getting meaningful data. People are just coming, and it's the equivalent of you sort of saying like, yeah, I guess all these people really like they really like turkey sandwiches, and you go, how do you know? Well, because they eat them every day. Do you serve anything else but turkey sandwiches? Well, no, exactly. That's all we serve. Okay, well, that's not meaningful data. And so you don't know how to improve your product and your offerings. I wonder what you thought about when he was talking about like what made for kind of good internal culture. You asked him a question about that, and he was talking about sort of an organization that he worked for, a company he worked for, that was sort of flat. He said flat, fast moving. The people were really curious. How does that how do those traits like resonate with you? Do you see that in some parts of the education sector or not other parts? Yeah.
I love the word curious. And I think personally that the aspect of curiosity in education, in entrepreneurship, in all these different sectors, I see the amount of curiosity and the amount of success people have as being highly correlated. I think the more curious you are, there's an element of humility in curiosity, the acknowledgement that you don't know everything and you have to be interested in what other people are saying and doing. There's an element of confidence in curiosity, like to acknowledge that you don't know, but you're interested in learning more. Like, so I think that what he was describing and his vision of culture and what he worked hard with his co-founders to create, to me made perfect sense. And as he was talking about having these group meetings, being nimble, being creating an environment where everybody could share what they're thinking and give feedback, give new ideas, compliment each other, encourage one another. To me, so much of it, checked all the boxes as to why they then created a product that was effective and wanted and eventually quite successful, because it all started with sort of what he was saying with what was happening inside, translated to what people were experiencing outside. Back on what he mentioned about culture and the example he gave when he said the highest compliment he got was when somebody had the same elevated experience no matter where they entered
across the organization.
Exactly.
I was having the same thought. Yeah.
And I just think that that's really powerful. And I don't know that people would say they always have that experience at a school, whether they talk to the teacher or the chief state school officer or the, whatever position they're engaging with in the education system in a specific state. I think they're going to get quite different experiences.
Yes.
And I think that that's a bummer.
Yeah. And listen, you and I have both been in schools, worked in schools. So we know these are not easy jobs. Let's give that disclaimer. We know these are not easy jobs. Who knows what might have been happening 10 minutes beforehand with one of the students or a family, whatever.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
That being said, I have seen such unevenness when it comes to maybe the person, whether it's in a school building, the office administrator, from that person, then the next person you talk to is maybe a teacher, and the next person is maybe a counselor, or and finally an assistant principal, whatever. Such unevenness sometimes. It doesn't instill confidence when there's that kind of lumpiness.
Yep.
Among the whether it's the tone or the work ethic or the what feels like the values, that it doesn't make you feel good about the user experience. And I love that he gave the example of the kick-ass cards.
Yeah, I thought
What
those
an
were so
interesting
cool.
way. I've never heard that before. And I think I bet a bunch of people were like me and heard that and were like, oh my gosh, people would be giving out $50 gift cards, like, just making it rain. But I bet not. I bet that people were judicious with it, right? Because if you're rewarding something that sort of goes, man, over and above, there's this like built-in accountability where your peers help you set the bar and say, hey, you went over and above, but by the way, like just doing a satisfactory job, like that's expected. We expect you to do your job and to do good work. You went over and above. And there is that sort of peer accountability, I think, is really powerful internally as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's even an element of curiosity in that too. Like you're looking, you're searching, you're engaged, you're trying to find ways to celebrate your coworkers, you're trying to find ways to pursue the goal. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I think that that's critical in achieving the success. The last part that I want to touch on before we have to wrap up was this idea of personalization that he mentioned at the end of the conversation, how critical personalizing experiences are to people in, whether he was personalizing his product to the clients he had or the experience that he was giving to his different clients. He felt like personalization in the education sector is critical to achieve success. What are your thoughts on either what that looks like or how you see it happening?
Yeah, well, I think it won't surprise you and probably folks who have listened to other episodes of ours that I'm kind of like, yeah, personalization, no brainer. Now, that being said, easier said than done.
Of course.
I get that we're talking about schools with a lot of children. We're talking about counties with a lot of kids and whatever. Even in a family with multiple children, like you're not. If someone said to me, "Hey, you need to personalize dinner,"
Yeah.
right? We say, "Well, no. The rule at dinner is you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. Not you get a personalized meal."
Right.
Right. But when we're talking about school and you're talking about, by the way, even in conventional public schools, we're talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars per year for a non-personalized educational experience. That's crazy to me. Right. So yeah, if we're trying to get the best out of students and help them to take agency of their own learning and really pursue things that that they're interested in and hopefully where their skills align, I think you've got to personalize the experience. That's going to mean involving parents because oftentimes kids they're not seeing with enough perspective to even know themselves.
Right.
So yeah, so I want to say I appreciate that it's easier said than done, but we've got to try.
Yeah.
Right? We cannot assume that just like that we say, oh well, you're on a career path. What? Well, how many careers are there? It's like infinite number of careers exist today that did not exist even 5 years ago.
Right.
So it's not satisfying to say to a kid, well, you're on the career track. You're on the college track. Well, what are you talking about, a college track? You know how many colleges there are and how many different things you can study?
Right.
Are you on the college track to become a French major, or are you on the college track to become a civil engineer? Like those are very different
For sure.
tracks and affinities, right? So anyway, I don't know. What are there things that it sort of immediately called to mind for you?
All of those things. Yes, personalization is necessary. Yes, it's harder said than done. And yes, there are ways to meet in the middle, and to give it a good shot. And sometimes it's not always just tailoring instruction. It's just recognizing that what you have in front of you is a classroom of individuals, and therefore, you're going to acknowledge them as such. So I think that there's huge opportunity. We see it every day in the examples we have the opportunity to be made aware of. And I hope that continues to spread. And I hope that personalization and individuality continues to be emphasized in learning environments in every type of schooling system. And yeah, I just think this was another great example of how much we can learn as educators, as professionals in the education space, how positively the education sector can be influenced when we take time to have conversations with people whose professional lives don't touch education at all. And yet there's so much there to highly inform what education, where it's going, and where it needs to be going, frankly.
Yeah. Well, let's do this again then.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks, Shaka.
Great. Thanks, Caitlin.
Take care.